Aloha, aloha, aloha. Welcome to Mindbeingwell Therapy and Wellness. Welcome to our Huna Healing webinar. Mahalo for coming. Mahalo, mahalo. Thank you. Tonight we're going to talk about Huna Healing and how Huna Healing therapy as therapy for depression and anxiety. We're going to speak about it and how it can hopefully help you to alleviate some of your symptoms of depression and anxiety, help you to get through some of those social anxiety situations. So, um, but I'd like to start first from a place of truth about Huna. Huna is very popular. I see it's very, very popular. A lot of people have wanted me to do this webinar from some people who were clients and also people who came to our website on Facebook asking for more information about Huna. So, from my understanding of the concept of Huna, which I've never heard a whole lot about, uh, because it's not a native, it is supposed to be a Native Hawaiian healing technique, but um, again, to give respect to different cultures and also respect of just truth and sacred practices and truth and practice at the same time. Uh, let's have a bit of a little history lesson so that we can, all be on the same accord with this. Max Freedom Long. That's a name that you're going to hear in relation to Huna. This is a Western expat. He was an elementary school teacher in Hawaii, and he became interested in Hawaiian spirituality and philosophy. And through this intrigue that he had about Hawaiian spirituality and philosophy and things of that nature, what he called magic at the time, he began to create his own philosophy of what he thought the native spirituality was, or his interpretation of it thereof. And through this, he created this concept of Huna, or what we call Huna, and or what he called Huna rather. And so this is his model, and his name again is Max Freedom Long. So we have him to thank for that, and it's his creation based on, inspired by what he saw as Native Hawaiian spirituality, and he was very impressed by it. So, although it's not Native Hawaiian in nature, it is inspired by Hawaiian teachings. So, we can still use it. It's effective as a coping mechanism in dealing with mental illness, and it even helps in self-actualization. So, it's closely related to concepts of Ho'omana, which is a Native Hawaiian philosophy. Also, the philosophy of Pono, which is the Hawaiian word that deals with righteousness and, dignity, righteousness, goodness, integrity. Those are things that Mr. Long may have looked at in coming up with this whole concept of Huna. So we want to thank him for that, but we also want to be accurate when we speak about this wonderful technique. So let me begin by explaining, and also if anyone has any more questions about how the origins of Huna, you can always email me at, or you can, well, I'll have it here in the comment section. But you can just go to the website and email me, welltherapy.healthcare, and or chat with me there, and I'll happily give you everything that I know. um, or anything that I say here as well. So, and also, I if you want to know anything about Native Hawaiian techniques of healing, I will be having webinars for that. But right now, we're going to start off with Huna because it's very popular. So, let's start off with what I call, well, what is called the three concepts of the self, which is, I would say, the broader first part of Huna. And so there are the three concepts of self. Now, in these three concepts of self, there is they're introduced as the conscious self, the unconscious self, and then the higher self. And the unconscious self is our self that exists um, as an individual being, the self part of us that we touch, that we feed, the substantive matter of ourselves, the self that we're aware of. It's our total awareness of who we are in ourselves. The self that we're constantly aware of is living and breathing, a manifestation of our physical self. That will be our conscious self, what we're consciously, for lack of a better word, aware of. Awareness of self, rather. Our unconscious self would be the second part of our self, our holistic self, rather. Our unconscious self would be our self that exists as the motivation, our motivational self. It's the motivations for our actions and feelings. It's our self that exists as our dreaming self. It's the part of us that experiences things like deja vu. It's not only the motivations for our feelings and actions, it's the part of ourselves that remembers things and catalogs things or experiences per se, and causes actions and reactions to stimuli, small bits of stimuli that we don't even recognize. For instance, if you had a particular color, and this color or this smell causes a reaction in you that, or it causes a positive or negative reaction, and you have no idea where it comes from. It's probably your unconscious self, or some people would like to say subconscious. I'm speaking to you from another place and time, something that you don't remember, but it's just beneath the surface. So that's what would be called your unconscious self. And then there's a higher self, and that will be the integration of these two selves. This is what I call the creator. This is your creative self. It's a wiser self. It's a better self. It's the self who seeks truth. It's a mature self. A lot of people say that this is a spiritual self, but again, I'd like to define this person as an integration. This is your holistic self. And this is the self that understands just how the conscious and unconscious are related. And so it understands what stimuli elicits what response, what causes you to feel the way that you feel, what causes you to react the way that you react. And it helps you to deal with your environment and deal with people based on the understanding of yourself. So that's what will be your highest self. A lot of people say also that is your best self. And so, but I'd like to argue just for a second that, or caution that we don't think of a higher self as the self that is perfect. It doesn't mean a perfect self. It means a self that is constantly seeking truth, a self that is constantly understanding ideas, concepts, learning, growing, not a perfect self. That's what will be your higher self. Okay? And before we get into the 7 principles of Huna, I'd like to, I'd like you to draw 3 spheres, or just imagine 3 spheres, 3 circles, one inside of the other. And in the last circle, I want you to imagine yourself in the last circle, or place a little stick figure in that last circle. On the outside of these spheres, you can write it counterclockwise. Write down conscious on the larger sphere, the outer sphere, the furthest outer sphere. The second largest, unconscious. And then the third tiniest sphere, higher self. And then, once you've done that, I'll explain it later why I had to write those things. Now let's get into the 7 principles of Huna. I'm sure you've heard a lot of them. And I kind of minimized them for the sake of a shorter video for you guys. But and so we can have much more discussion. The 7 principles of Huna. First we'll start with Ike. Ike, I-K-E. It's the principle of the world is what you think it is. The world is what you think it is. And I'll go through these and then we'll go back and discuss them. The next principle, and write for me Ike on that first sphere where you wrote conscious, on the very outside of it, on the left. And on the right, please write the next word, which is Kala. K-A-L-A. And that principle says there are no limits. There are no limits. But you don't have to write that. Just write Kala. The next principle I'll introduce to you is Makia. Makia. M-A-K-I-A. It's the principle that energy flows where attention goes. Energy flows where attention goes. And that's going to go on the left-hand side on the outer surface of the second circle. And to the right on the inside of the second circle would go Manawa. M-A-N-A-W-A. M-A-N-A-W-A. Manawa. And that principle is now is the moment of power. Now is the moment of power. Now on that third circle, I want you to write Aloha. Aloha, and that's everyone's favorite, naturally so, and we think oftentimes that that means hello. It does. It is a greeting, but it's a greeting from this place. It means to love is to be happy with someone or something. Aloha. Which, again, to love is to be happy with someone or something. And that's on the smallest sphere on the left-hand side. Okay, that's the smallest sphere on the left-hand side. Now on that inner smallest sphere on the right-hand side, I want you to write M-A-N-A, Mana. M-A-N-A. And for that principle of Huna, it means all power comes from within. All power comes from within. Now, closer to the little stick figure that you drew would be pono for effectiveness, happiness, integrity, truth. You put that in big letters. And then I'll explain why we did these spheres leading into the self, the figure of self, and conscious, unconscious, and higher self. And we'll deal with that. Now, for each of these 7 principles of Huna, Ike, Kala, Makia, Manawa, Aloha, Mana, Pono, for each of these, we placed them on the spheres for this reason, the way that we did. As you can see, Ike and Kala were on the conscious spheres, consciousness, because these are 2 concepts that you consciously make a decision about. The world is what you think it is. These are conscious thoughts, for lack of a better word. These are your decision-making principles. These are principles that you are aware of. These are principles that you choose how and when you would like to deal with your experiences. So in other words, for any experience that we have, we often hear people say, well, you make the conscious decision to feel good or bad about it. And as we know, individuals that suffer with depression and anxiety, many of you do, oftentimes you feel as though it's not a choice to feel or think the world anyway. And we're not speaking of things living outside of the realm of reality. We're not speaking of doing that. What we're speaking of is a sort of choosing to have an alternate thought, not even necessarily feeling that way, but a choice of making an alternate thought. The world is what you think it is. And in having that choice of an alternate thought, you're removing limitations from your experience. And this is all a part of your consciousness. As we move into the inner sphere, we start speaking about energy flowing where attention goes. And about presence, now is the moment of power. Where Makia is concerned, this is your unconscious self. And the reason why it's your unconscious self, and you've moved away from your conscious decisions of thinking of the world how you would like to think it is, outside of the limitations of what others have placed on you, or the world has placed on the experience, outside of those limitations, because you've consciously made a decision, unconsciously, while you're making that decision, energy is flowing in the direction of negativity or positivity. And that is your unconscious. And while that energy is flowing unconsciously, it's creating a feeling which also we touched on as a part of your unconscious self. So the conscious self, EK and Kala, created this makia. And this makia, when you have this positive feeling, that positive feeling is coming from a manawa, a moment of power. At that point, in your positivity, you're experiencing power. And by experiencing this power, you experience something else with that power that you didn't know that you had. And that is where aloha comes in. And as I said before, that's not hello. Oftentimes you also hear the spirit of aloha, because the spirit of aloha means the spirit of love. It's not just hello. So the next time someone says aloha to you, you understand just how special it is that they're actually greeting you with the spirit of love, which is a very special greeting. So going back to the spirit, so your unconscious self now is operating from a spirit of power, from energetic power, positive energy. And from that comes confidence, and out of that comes love of self, or at least a confident self, which would be beginning to travel into the realm of higher self. Because now you're understanding how to be that effective person, or the pono, you're understanding your pono, which would be now you're being more self-aware. Now at this point, you're understanding what it takes to gain integrity, and you're understanding where your strength and power will come from, what it looks like to you. Because everyone's strength and power looks different. And then I want to say something else about this higher self. A higher self is not a perfect self. A higher self is not something to reach. And once you reach it, you're some sort of guru, and that's it. A higher self is merely understanding self. But because the self is constantly evolving, you're simply taking a journey, and the journey becomes exciting, creative, happy, enjoyable, because now you understand what it takes to live and experience the self through a place of love and happiness instead of anxiety and depression. So how Huna helps is that it helps in redefining your life and shaping your life. It's a set of life principles. So it's not meditation, as I'm sure you guys might confuse it to meditate, but it's not necessarily meditation. But it helps us to redefine our life and to, in terms of wellness, reach self-actualization, not perfection, self-actualization and self-understanding and higher truths. It also helps us to notice and understand the relationship and interconnectivity between our thoughts, our feelings, and physiology. By doing this, we can actively be mindful of changes based on stressors and then identify those changes. We can understand changes in our thoughts, our feelings, our bodies based on particular stressors. And once we identify those changes, and we also identify the stressors, then we can identify different routes around those stressors so that we can eliminate the symptoms or minimize them at the very least. So the main objective is that we can modify our behavior, modify our company, or even our environment to minimize the symptoms that trigger negative physical or psychological reactions. But we first must identify what causes them. And that's what's so great about Huna is that it allows you the opportunity to identify what those triggers are, because you're able to pay attention to. Okay, reading that. Okay, so what I'd like to do is give you an idea of the interconnectedness of stress, a small idea. For those of us that live in big cities, and there's constant traffic in big cities, the stressors of that traffic, for many people who suffer from depression or anxiety, it hits them immediately, or even airports even. And it affects our feelings, which is our subconscious, almost immediately, because the next thing we know, we can be listening to music or something of that nature, and we are angry. And it happens almost instantaneously. The mood shifts, the change shifts, tone shifts. But something else happens during that time as well. Our bodies tense, our muscles tense. We're also inhaling smog and gas. We're seeing cluttered scenery. Our physiological triggers and physical triggers are all negative at that point. And so, as you can see, they're all interconnected. Those of us who have high blood pressure, our blood pressure could rise. Oftentimes, when we get home, we'll eat a little bit too much, or we'll rush and eat something because by the time we arrive home, it's very late due to traffic. But once you understand interconnectivity, then you can understand that, okay, that's a major stressor. It's something that affects all three areas, consciously, unconsciously, of the self, and it's just simply not good. And so at that point, you can go back and make a conscious decision, and that is, would you like to live somewhere else? And because you know, and there is the second Huna principle of power, that there are no limits, realistically speaking, you can. You can. It's just an entirely different way of thinking about the world. I see that. Another important concept when speaking about the creation of Huna is this oceanic view that Native Hawaiians have about life in general. And it's a view of life all life being interconnected. And this helps with depression and so as far as it helps with loneliness. We're able to understand not just loneliness, but bereavement as well. And that if you understand that everything is interconnected and everyone is interconnected, then the ideas of individuality, individualism, and being alone and not having a partner and things of that nature don't count as bad if you understand that you're connected to everything.